25 September, it will be International Ataxia Awareness Day. Today, I'm speaking to Carol Francis. She is a retired nursing sister and the mother of Andrew Wobbles Marshall, who has been living with Frederick's ataxia for many decades. We interviewed Andrew just over a year ago, and he gave us a lot of wisdom. He is the author of Dissecting Wobbles and has a YouTube channel called Documenting Wobbles. I remember his favorite quote is from Helen Keller. I cried because I had no shoes until I met a man with no feet. I thought it was brilliant. Good morning, Carol, and thank you for your time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Let's start from your point of view as a parent. When Andrew was diagnosed, now keeping in mind that this was during a time when information about these diseases, NMDs, were scarce. Doctors didn't have a lot of information. They were mostly uninformed. How did that change you and your family's life, if you can remember?
Well, first of all, from grade one, I knew that there was something not right with Andrew because I'd had two other children through grade one, and Andrew was always falling and always had a bump on his head or whatever. And I took him to many, many specialists. His spine was curving. We went to neuros, musculars, x-rays, all sorts of things. And Andrew was only diagnosed at 16. So I was given some pretty strange diagnoses, which I thought, no, these are definitely not correct. But at 16, there was somebody, she just come from England and she was testing bloods for FA in Stellenbosch. And I think Andrews were possibly the very first bloods to be tested in South Africa and still had to go back to England to be verified. And then we went back to the doctor and she came out with the diagnosis of Frederick's ataxia. And being a nursing sister, I had no clue what Frederick's ataxia was. And I don't think that they knew too much because I was given a diagnosis of 4 years for Andrew. And then he was 16, he is now 43. So I was a single mother. I was working several jobs to keep the home fires burning. We were living in a townhouse with stairs going up to the bedrooms, and Andrew was forever falling down the stairs and hitting his head. So the first thing I had to do was move house. And at that stage, he was at a special school because not only did he have this Frederick's ataxia, but he is also very dyslexic. And he was at a special school which only went up to standard 5. And I had to find somewhere where from standard 6 he could. So we did find a school that would help him. And we moved house to very close to the school. But it definitely threw me into confusion as to what do I do now.
Yeah.
And there wasn't very much on internet or anything. Not that I know how to, not that I knew how to work internet, but I couldn't pick up very much at all. So that was the beginning of it.
Yeah, I do remember those days myself. I was also diagnosed
Mm-hmm.
or misdiagnosed in the 90s. But I saw the video where you told the story of Andrew being 10 years old and asking you to pull over the car when you went through a difficult time, giving you a hug. And then he was saying, you'll get through it and you're a team.
Yes.
Throughout Andrew's progression over the years, what can you tell us about teamwork and beating the odds?
Well, it's always been teamwork because he's needed help. So it was him and I. And I also before his diagnosis, I had worked at a home with 14 quadriplegics. And I'd also been matron of a frail care with a lot of beds and 200 cottages in a retirement village. So what the quads taught me was amazing. I mean, I never knew that I would have a child like Andrew. And what they taught me, together with problems of the elderly with pressure sores and bowel problems or whatever, it combined with what I knew I had to do with Andrew and what the progression was going to be. I, just remember we always talked about, okay, Andrew, you're getting thrown out of shops now because you're walking like a drunk. Use a stick, and then we would fight because he didn't want to look disabled. But that taught me a lot, and we did work together, and we just survived that way.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about the fact that you're a nursing sister, and that must have helped a lot because, I remember no one in my family was doing anything close to medical. And it was difficult for us to figure this out because there was just no frame of reference. And at least, you had a frame of reference so that you could
Yeah.
solve some of the problems. Whereas
Yeah.
we were totally in the
Blind
dark. Yeah,
in
blind
the
in the
deep,
dark. Yeah.
in the deep end. Yes,
So that must have
yes.
helped a lot, at least from
It
that
helped
perspective.
a lot. But I always say nurses go home. They might work from 7 to 7, but then they go home. This was a 24-hour job, and it's quite difficult telling your then 16 to 25-year-old son, even your 43-year-old son, you know, please keep turning. You're going to get pressure sores. Get off your bottom,
Yeah.
etc., etc.
Yeah.
Yes.
You were talking about Andrew falling and bumping his head. I remember this was, I can't remember the exact date because it's all blurry, but it must have been either early 2000s or late 1990s. I was still staying with my parents, and I tried to walk down the kitchen stairs at the back. Not, yeah, the kitchen stairs at the back, the outside stairs. So in my mind, I was just thinking, but I've done this just a couple of years ago. This is nonsense. And I grabbed two crutches because I was walking with two crutches. I walked down. I tried to walk down because it's high stairs. It wasn't, it's not small steppies.
Mm.
And when I hit the second step, I lost my balance. I fell hard on the cement because it's cement outside. And I was lying there. Luckily, I didn't break anything. But just at that moment, my mother, and she's since passed on, she came around from the shops and saw this whole disaster. I think I hit some of the tables, and it was all a mess. And she knew exactly what I was trying to do, and we both started laughing uncontrollably, um, because of the situation. Either cry or you can laugh. Are there any
Better
funny?
to laugh.
Better
Yeah.
to laugh. Are there any funny stories that you remember with Andy?
I think I've got quite a few where Andrew would fall and I tried to get him up. And this is where were a team because he'd fall and I'd try to get him. And then he'd say, have you ever seen anybody falling off the floor? And then we'd lie there and roll around on the floor and laugh until we had a bar put up in the passage and I would take him by his feet and drag him off to the bar. Don't forget he could do much more in those days. And I would get his hands on them and help him into his chair. But I also remember moving. Now we were moving from this townhouse with the stairs to here. It was New Year's Eve. I had my truck packed with things, my bucky. And I said, Andrew, be careful now. And he jumped off onto a brick and broke his toe.
Oh,
So I thought, well, I know what to do with a broken toe. You just put a spatula in there and strap it up. But I thought, you know what? I better take him to outpatients. He might never walk properly in a shoe again. And that we laugh about now because he can't walk at all.
Yeah, like it's gonna
And then,
matter, you know.
yeah. And another time was he was walking with a walker and he was going to the toilet. And the next thing I heard, clatter, bang. And there he landed upside down in the bath with the walker on top. At the zoo, that's right. I was pushing him in his chair, and we came down and over a bump, and the chair went over. The wheel came off. Andrew fell down, and the wheelchair was there, and he was there, and I sat down on the side, and I started to cry.
Oh.
So what I've done now to my child. And a lady came on one of those zoo carts, and she said, is there anything the matter? And then I didn't cry anymore. I laughed, and the two of us lay there laughing until somebody came and helped us to get him back into that.
Yeah,
And
that's
one more was he
yes.
was going to Australia, and I said, Andrew, please sit down now because you've got to get on that plane tonight. No, he didn't sit down. He went tottering off because he was walking, and he fell into a pot plant that had a spike, and the spike landed up through under his arm. It could have so easily gone, and we wheeled him off like a wheelbarrow with his hands, and his friend was here, and we all just laughed at that.
Well, luckily it could have gone, you know, the worse, much worse.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's right, much worse. Yeah.
yeah, Andrew, you know, on the one hand, he's very positive, and you know, apart from what you can learn from him, you know, is a sense of humor. But on the other hand, he's got a lot of challenges. You know, Fred's, you mentioned dyslexia. He's mentioned, you know, at times depression. Like most of us who have these kinds of
Sure.
diseases, it doesn't matter what type of depression, but at some point you're going to feel it. Other than the sense of humor, what have you learned from him as a person over the years, and possibly
Patience.
patience?
Patience. Yeah. Yeah, I've learned patience. I've actually thought about his sense of humor and thought, if he didn't have this sense of humor, it would be a terrible thing. During COVID really hit him with depression because I think that he was more afraid because it's only the two of us. And I think he was more afraid of me dying and what will happen to him, although everything was planned. So that's basically it.
Yeah, COVID was also, I was pretty much also on my own. I
Mm,
was just telling someone this morning, for 18 months, I isolated myself and you know, I had my family coming in with masks and so on. But
mm,
yeah, it's difficult. It was a difficult time. It the disease itself taught me a lot during COVID times where other persons were just lost. So I drew kind of strength from that during COVID times. But yeah, it was a very tough time for many people, and
many people.
I can just imagine it was very tough for you as well.
One thing I didn't put in there was how proud I am about his perseverance.
Yeah,
That book took 10 years because the hand doesn't, but that I have admired about Andrew, his sense of humor and his perseverance
yeah.
in doing things. I've just also learned a little bit about it now because I can't do everything that I used to do. And then I think, yeah, why am I getting upset? Look at him. So, but that's another thing to add.
It's a different world in 2024 from compared to the 1990s when the information, as you mentioned, were just not there. But Yeah, and the doctors know a lot more about these NMDs. What advice can you give to parents of kids living with Freds these days?
I had a patient once in Flora Clinic, and he'd been there for 4 years. And his parents didn't even, they were too afraid to even feed him.
Sure.
And eventually I got him out and he went to his sister's wedding. And I've always said, when they start, don't wrap them in cotton wool. I used to tell Andrew, pick up your clothes. He could do it. I wasn't going to run behind him and pick them up. The other thing is, as as the disease progresses and they can do less and less, their world does shrink.
Yeah.
And parents, people with long-term illnesses very often take out their frustration on their caregiver and don't take it personally because they're frustrated more than being angry. Um, Also, you must try to let them live a normal life, as normal as possible. Maybe I was wrong, but we didn't go to neuro physiotherapists. We went to gym. Andrew went to gym every day. And because at one stage he did drive a car and he could take him. I was working, but he could take himself to gym. And as a teenager, he he went to parties. His friends looked after him. And I wasn't worried because I knew that they would look after him. So, my thing is just don't wrap them in cotton wool. As they progress, you've got to help them more and understand.
Just to get in there, I also jumped in the beginning, but that
Mm,
was
mm,
because we had no information. I was the diagnosis wasn't conclusive, and the doctor couldn't tell me a hell of a lot about what I must do. So
mm,
a friend of mine said, "I'm training for the August. Why you've got why have you got these skinny legs? Join me." And I just
okay.
realized when I was gymming that some muscles back then was getting bigger and some was just nothing happening to them. So you can speculate about whether it was the right thing to do, whether it's a wrong thing. Did it, if does it really matter? Because it was going to progress in any event.
In
Only
any
thing that
event.
it could
But
have done is maybe quicker, maybe it progressed quicker. I don't know. I mean, while I was
no,
gymming, I don't think so. I think it was a good thing for me back then to keep going
mm. I
mentally.
think that those boys at Andrew's gym kept him out of a wheelchair for at least 3 years. And they were very good to him because they stretched him. And when he could, he was on the treadmill and his upper arm strength. I firmly believe that they kept him out of a wheelchair for 3 years.
Yeah, I also
So,
think that it's better. I mean, you will when you start getting sore, there's a natural your body will your brain will protect you, and you'll say, okay, I'm not going to do that exercise anymore. And the muscles that were there, I continued to, they were growing. So if they while they're
mm,
still
mm,
there, I was under the impression, gym them while they're still there. And you can stop when you're feeling pain and when you obviously you're not going to overdo it. So yeah, I also think that
okay.
uh,
But another thing, I just to interrupt, another thing that as Andrew progressed and got worse, somehow I think both of us kept thinking, oh, well, we can cope with this. Thinking, we knew in our hearts it was going to progress further, but thinking, oh, well, this is not so bad, we can manage. But then, of course, the progression was so slow.
yeah,
Mm,
I've got the same thing. You I started a career, and because
mm,
I didn't get a proper diagnosis, the progression was so slow. And then at some point you find yourself in a perfect storm.
yeah, yeah.
And no one knows how to deal with it because You don't know, they don't know. So it was very difficult.
Was we moved close to the school, and the school, I got him a computer to work on because he couldn't write. Andrew never had notes or anything, and I got him a computer. So I used to make him walk home from school because I was working, and he could still walk. So Andrew, please walk home from school. Leave the computer, I'll pick it up. Um, and the mothers at the school all offered him a lift, and he took it, thinking, this poor sick little boy, his mother makes him walk home from school, but he always accepted the lift. Yeah, that was one thing. Yeah.
He should have exercised. Yeah, he should have exercised.
Well, that's what I was trying to make him do.
You mentioned to me before that your life philosophy is it is what it is. That's a very stoic outlook on life. I'm a big fan of the Stoics. But what does it mean for you?
It means for me, it is what it is. So let's not get all emotional and hysterical about the situation. Let's try and find uh, I've lost the word. Let's try and find a solution to make the situation better.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Mm. So that's basically what I mean.
And then Carol, the
Uh,
last, yeah,
Go on, go on.
the last question I want to ask you is about legacy. All of us want to leave a legacy in this life. And I was wondering what it is that your legacy, what you want to be. What's your legacy?
Well, I haven't mentioned it, but I do have stage 4 terminal cancer. And I, I'm sort of a person who, I don't know if I've got low self-esteem or what, but I don't think that there's much that I can leave. But I've always loved my nursing. And even when there were people sick in the neighborhood or whatever, I would go and sit the night and I didn't charge them. I've always tried to help people. And I have tried to help Andrew. Um, I've done my very best, and I just hope that my family will remember me for somebody who has always tried to help. Even now, I get phone calls. Um, I used to play bowls from members saying, this, that, and the other. What do you think I should do? And I always say, well, I'm not a doctor, but this is what I would do. Check with your doctor. That's all I can do now. But I used to go and do dressings or inspect somebody's beds or whatever. And I just hope they remember me as somebody who would help.
And that is an extremely important thing in life. I don't think people understand that helping is one of the most important things that you can do to other persons. And not only that, it makes you feel better. So instead of just chasing money and all of those things, helping more helps society, it helps the persons you're helping, and it helps yourself. So,
But I do have to add, because I did say I was a single mother for about 20, 25 years, I don't know. But I got married, I met someone, and I got married 9 years ago. And I have to say, we could not have continued without Bill's help at this stage, because now Andrew needs to be lifted bodily. I do have help, but Bill has been a tremendous help to me as well. So I must say thank you to him.
thanks you so much, Carol. I really appreciate you doing this. Members watching this will learn a lot from it, and I hope they pearls of wisdom that they're getting. Thank you so much.
Well,
Really appreciate it.
you can give them my phone number. I can still give advice. Okay.
Thanks. I will
Thank
definitely pass that on, and they will see this. And if they
you.
do
Yes,
want to do that, they can phone the Muscular Dystrophy Foundation of South Africa, contact them.
absolutely.
Speak to Gerda as
Absolutely.
well. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Carol. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.